All right, welcome. So, you've done the really hard part, right? The experiments are finished, the data's all there, the analysis is done. But now you've got this totally different challenge. How do you turn that mountain of research into a paper that's actually clear, persuasive, and, publishable? Well, that's exactly what we're going to tackle today. We're going to build that structure piece by piece so you can turn your research into something that really grabs people's attention. You know that feeling, right? I think we all do. You're just staring at this folder, it's packed with all your amazing findings, and then you look over at a completely blank screen. And that temptation, it's so strong, just to dive in and start typing, get some words on the page. A lot of us think, I don't have time to plan, I just need to go. But honestly, as you're about to see, that's pretty much the fastest way to get yourself totally lost. Yeah, when you start writing without any kind of roadmap, it is so easy to just lose the plot. Your ideas start bleeding into each other, your main arguments start wandering off in weird directions, and before you know it, you're writing about stuff that's not even really relevant to your main point. And what you end up with is, well, it's a mess. A paper that just confuses the reader and buries your brilliant core ideas under a pile of disorganized text. Okay, so how do we fix that? How do we untangle that mess? Well, we're going to follow a really clear step-by-step process. First, we'll talk about the blank page problem. Then we'll get into the solution, your blueprint, the outline. From there, we'll zoom right in on building your argument, paragraph by paragraph. Then we'll pull back out to see how it all crafts a research story. And finally, we'll wrap it all up with a super handy checklist of key do's and don'ts. So let's really dig into that temptation to just start writing. It usually comes from a feeling of pressure, right? A sense that there's just no time to waste. But what we're going to see is that taking the time to plan right at the beginning actually saves you a ton of time and frustration later on. It's really the difference between building a house with a blueprint versus just grabbing some boards and starting to nail them together. And this slide really lays out the two paths you can take. Over on the left, you've got the writing first approach. It's just a tangled, confusing journey for anyone trying to read your work. But look at the right. The outlining first approach creates a clean, logical path. Your points are sharp and focused, the logic flows naturally, and your reader can actually follow the argument you're trying to make. It's a no-brainer, really. So this brings us to the core solution, the outline. I want you to think of yourself as an architect for a minute. You would never, ever start building a skyscraper without a detailed blueprint, right? Well, as a researcher, your outline is exactly that. It's the absolutely essential foundation that makes sure your final manuscript is solid, coherent, and structurally sound. And this is why the outline isn't just a friendly suggestion, it's a hard and fast rule. This is the stage where you do all the heavy lifting of organizing your thoughts. Trust me, once the outline is done, the actual writing just becomes a process of filling in the blanks of a structure you already know works. It's so much easier. And that's because an outline is way more than just a list of headings. It's your map. It's the logical skeleton of your entire paper, showing exactly how each piece of evidence, each little claim, systematically builds towards your main conclusion. It literally forces you to think through your entire argument before you get bogged down in the details of writing a perfect sentence. So what's this look like in practice? Well, you start with your thesis, that one sharp claim your whole paper is making. That's your cornerstone. Then you group all your supporting ideas and data into, say, 3 or 4 big themes. And here's a great pro tip. Arrange your figures and tables first. They'd often tell a story all by themselves and can literally form the backbone of your paper. Finally, for every single point you want to make, write just one summary sentence. Boom, you've got a paragraph-by-paragraph guide for the entire paper. Okay, so we've got the blueprint for the whole paper. Now, let's zoom in on the actual building blocks, the paragraphs. Every single paragraph needs to be its own mini argument that supports the bigger thesis. Remember, you're not just presenting information here, you are actively trying to persuade your reader. This is one of the most important ideas in all of academic writing. You can throw a chart, a statistic, or a quote onto the page, but you can't just assume your reader is going to get why it's important or how it connects to your point. Your job as the author is to be the guide. You have to explicitly spell out the so what of every single piece of evidence you present. Now, a really powerful way to do this is with the meal plan. It's a great framework. Each paragraph needs a main point. That's your topic sentence. Then you present your evidence, your data, sources, and so on. Now, here's the crucial part, the analysis. This is where you explain how that evidence proves your point. And finally, you link it all back to your main thesis, or just transition smoothly to the next idea. And you can really see the difference here. A weak argument is just a pile of facts. It leaves the reader to do all the work of putting the puzzle together. But a strong argument, it builds a bridge for the reader. It makes a clear claim, it gives the evidence, and most importantly, it includes that analysis that connects the two. It makes your case impossible to ignore. Okay, we've built some strong paragraphs. Let's zoom back out and see how all these blocks fit together to tell a compelling story across the entire manuscript. Because at the end of the day, that's what a great paper is. It's the story of your research. You know, most academic papers follow this classic funnel or maybe an hourglass shape. You start off really broad in the introduction, setting the general context. Then you narrow right down to your specific problem, your methods, your results, the really focused core of your work. And finally, in the discussion and conclusion, you broaden back out again, explaining the wider implications of what you found. And in fact, that familiar IMRAD structure, introduction, methods, results, and discussion, it maps perfectly onto a classic story arc. The introduction, that's your setup, where you establish the world and the problem. The methods and results, that's the conflict and the climax, the action, the big reveal. And the discussion is the resolution, where we finally learn what it all means. Thinking about it this way really helps you build narrative momentum. All right, to wrap things up, let's boil all of this down into a simple checklist. These are the essential do's and don'ts that you can just pull up every time you sit down to structure a new manuscript. First up, the do's. Always build your structure first with an outline. Center the whole paper on one single sharp thesis. Don't just show your evidence, analyze it using a framework like MEAL. And remember to think of your paper as a story, one that gets even stronger when you actually take the time to address potential counter-arguments. And now for the don'ts. Please, never start with a blank page and no plan. Don't just dump facts on the page and hope for the best. You need to persuade. Keep any background info laser-focused and relevant. And this is a big one. Avoid recounting the painful journey of your research. Nobody needs to read a diary of every dead end you hit. They want the final, compelling story. And of course, always keep your tone professional and academic. If you only take one thing away today, let it be this. An academic paper is not just a neutral report of everything you did. It is a carefully structured, persuasive argument. You are the expert here. You are guiding your reader through the evidence to a compelling and logical conclusion. You are telling the story of your discovery. So as you go back and look at your own data, I want you to think like a storyteller who has a blueprint. Don't ask, how am I going to write all this stuff down? Instead, ask yourself this. What is the single most important story that my research has to tell? Find that story, and believe me, the structure will follow.